Pakistan cricket at its best. 1 minute down, next minute up.
Thanks very much, everybody, for joining me once again. My guest today is a regular contributor on PakPassion, a very popular contributor as well. I call him the fountain of knowledge when it comes to Caribbean cricket, and he certainly is. He's a writer, a TV broadcaster, radio commentator as well. And he's a long-time friend of mine and also of PakPassion's, the one and only Fazeer Mohammad. Fazeer, very warm welcome to you. And I can see you've got a big smile on your face today.
Yeah, I think you need a wider screen for this edition of the program to accommodate my smile, much like a year ago when there was that famous victory at the Gabba over Australia, although, of course, these are very different circumstances.
Well, I must admit, even as a Pakistani cricket follower, I think if there's any team that Pakistan are going to lose to, I'm always delighted when the West Indies do well.
Absolutely. And I think, this to me is the real disappointment of where West Indies cricket is. Because as I've mentioned to you in previous interviews, West Indies cricket is like Brazil at football, where everybody, of course, supports their own nation, but has a real, not just sympathy, has a real feeling for Brazil because of the way they play the game and the way they've defined the game for nearly a century. In the same way for West Indies cricket. And especially for what we would call the so-called third world. The rise and the dominance of the West Indies has meant so much to so many people for many years. And therefore, it's always nice to hear it. And of course, I know it's not said in any patronizing manner because people really have that feeling for West Indies and West Indies cricket.
I think both you and I, Fazeer, we should apologise to the West Indies team because after that first Test match, I think neither of us gave them a chance, did we?
Well, we didn't give them a chance either going into the Gabba Test match of a year ago. And I think all of that would have been based on evidence and the facts and the realities. And therefore, when you see a West Indies team perform as they've done and show a bit of quality, even though the batting remains a major concern, and the Pakistanis were actually beaten at their own game with the spin option, you get a measure of satisfaction to see that the even what we might want to consider the dying embers of West Indies in Test match cricket, there's still enough of a flicker to suggest that if they were to be given a real opportunity to play enough Test cricket and quality Test match cricket and develop the game back in the Caribbean significantly at the red ball level, the West Indies could be competitive once again. Never to the level of dominance of the 80s, for example, because that was unprecedented. But certainly the West Indies still have what it takes to be a decent Test match team.
It's a good point you make, Fazeer, about beating Pakistan at their own game. I think possibly a little bit of complacency from the Pakistan side. They thought we'll produce these turning pitches and it'll be a comfortable 2-0.
Absolutely, and that is the danger of complacency. The West Indies know only too well about complacency because for many of us, myself included, growing up in that era, you took it for granted that the West Indies will always be dominant, that the West Indies will find 4 fast bowlers any and everywhere. And that seemed to be reflected in the failure to put in the work to ensure that the grassroots are properly nurtured. And in the shorter context, this idea that preparing raging turners every time for your spinners to dominate and prevail has almost immediately been shown to be foolhardy. And therefore, I think it's one-dimensional. I made that point even after the Pakistanis won the first Test match. I think it's one-dimensional. I think it does a disservice to the broad spectrum of quality in Pakistan cricket. And I don't think Pakistan cricket will be the better for choosing this strategy.
I think after that first Test match, one of the things that really impressed me about the West Indies was how quickly they adapted, their change in tactics, especially with the bat. They looked to attack a lot more in that second Test match, and ultimately how quickly they learned from that first Test match defeat.
It's interesting, Saj, because when it comes off, it looks good. When it doesn't, it looks foolhardy. If you recall, Kraigg Brathwaite tried almost the same strategy at the start of the second innings of the first Test and was caught on the deep mid-wicket boundary within minutes of the start of the innings. This time around, it came off for him. And he continued to play that way. And he recognized it was no point prodding and poking around. And if you can capitalize on those moments, and he got a bit of support from Amir Jangu in his first test match. At one stage in that second innings, the West Indies were 92 for 1 and going extremely well, because they knew at some point the spinners would hold sway. But you've got to cash in when you have that opportunity. And credit to Brathwaite, because he struggled through almost all of 2024. He's barely gotten a run. Many people have asked, should he be allowed to even have the chance to play 100 test matches in July when Australia come to the Caribbean for 3 tests? But now, having played this innings and having captained the West Indies to this series leveling victory, you would think it's automatic that he'd retain his place in the top order and as captain. And he would have deserved it by the way he played the game. He was willing to risk his wicket for the sake of the team.
I thought he led the West Indies, putting his batting aside in that match. I thought he led the West Indies very well in that second test match as well.
Indeed. And again, it's a recognition of the realities that, look, it's a spinner's pitch. You balance by putting in attacking fielders, putting fielders out in the deep. I find he's a bit too defensive at times, even with that. But it worked. In the end, when you think about it, and many people have been scratching their heads to work out, has there ever been a situation where a team at 38 for 7 on day 1 of a test match would have gone on to win it? And therefore, it showed that the West Indies, even after being recovering to 163, had that belief that their bowlers could do the job. And a lot of that would have to do with the captain leading from the front, trusting his bowlers, who would not have had a world of experience in international conditions. And the spinners actually delivered. Famously, in the first test, when Jomel Warrican got 10 wickets, the headline in the Daily Express newspaper here in my native Trinidad and Tobago was 10 for nothing, meaning 10 wickets, but you lose. Now, of course, it's 9 for something, because he got 9 wickets. The West Indies won. He was man of the match, man of the series. So, yes, it's about rejoicing in these moments, but hoping that the West Indies could actually have the chance to build on it for the next series.
I mean, Warrican is just a number of players who, when the squad was announced, and I'm not being disrespectful here, but a lot of Pakistani cricket followers will not have known too much about some of these guys who were taking part in this series, Fazeer. And it's credit to these boys who've done really well, because they haven't got a lot of experience, many of these guys.
And the thing is such, and I don't hold it against anyone for not being aware of these players, even though Gudakesh Motie got 13 wickets in a test match against Zimbabwe. Because again, the question will be asked, who is Zimbabwe? And therefore, one of the realities that we face as West Indies is that even before a 2-tier system, we've been playing a lot of second division cricket for some time. A one-off test against Afghanistan, a couple of test series against Bangladesh, test series against Zimbabwe, which will always be under the radar. So even if Warrican would have done well there, or Motie would have done well there, I don't blame Pakistani audiences for not being aware, because who really takes notice of these series unless they're playing the big nations? But Warrican and Motie, they've been around for some time. Motie has excelled, particularly in the white ball format. I believe he has a PSL contract, so the fans in Pakistan are going to have a good look at him for that tournament. Jomel Warrican, like so many spinners in the Caribbean, has been in and out of the West Indies team. He would have done well on occasion, then be dropped, done well again, then dropped again for different conditions and different circumstances. So it's only reasonable for these names to be a surprise. But they've been in around the West Indies setup for about 5-6 years, taking wickets here and there, but nothing to the level of what we saw in those couple of test matches in Multan.
Unity has been questionable, and it's been flouted as one of the reasons for the demise in West Indies cricket, Fazeer, over the years, certainly in recent times. But this group looked very united. You had like tailenders coming in and scoring vital runs, and they seemed to be backing each other behind the captain. So, you can't fault their unity and their effort in this series, can you?
No, you can't. And the thing is, Saj, even when the West Indies were at the very highest of their pomp, the 1980s, where I think West Indies only lost 6 test matches in a 10-year period, just 6 test matches, and had those great duels with Imran Khan and Pakistan over that period of time that we remember so fondly. There was infighting. There was what we call insularity, territorial differences, where people from Trinidad and Tobago upset because so-and-so player was not picked. Fans threatening to boycott a test because their favorite was not picked. Yet the West Indies were powerful. Now you have a team that is struggling, yes, but the players are united. Generally, there'll always be little niggles, little issues here and there, as there would in any team. But I don't think there's ever been, to me, a feeling of a team that is falling apart as far as their sense of respect for each other. The challenge has always been, certainly over the last 2 decades, to be able to get it together on the field. Because the West Indies team is a unit, they get along well together, different islands, different territories, but getting it together on the field is where the challenge really is.
More than 34 years since a test win in Pakistan. It's been a long wait, hasn't it, Fazeer?
Well, to put it in context, when West Indies drew that series 1-1 in 1990, when Waqar Younis burst onto the scene, a young fast bowler by the name of Ian Bishop was playing his first test series away from home. And now Ian Bishop is a veteran television commentator, which tells you how wide that gap was. In fact, Bishop returned from that 1990 tour with a stress fracture of the lower back and was out of the game for about 18 months. But yes, it's been a very long time. 34 years in cricketing terms is about 3 generations of cricketers, if you really think about it. So it has been a long time. Whether the West Indies can replicate that, we'll have to wait and see. We should also be appreciative of the reality that for a significant period of time, from 2009 until 2019, Pakistan didn't play in Pakistan. For example, the West Indies won a test match against Pakistan away from home, but that was in Sharjah in 2016, when Kraigg Brathwaite got an unbeaten 160 and an unbeaten 60. But the series was already lost 2-0 when they won that test match. So there are a number of variables there, but you're absolutely right. 34 years is a long time, and I know Ian Bishop knows that.
Fazeer, many observers of the game will ask the question, is this another false dawn for West Indies cricket? Because we've seen it over the years where they produce a result sometimes when you least expect them to. And then it's, with all due respect, normality resumes, mediocrity resumes. Is this another false dawn, or is this the beginning of a new era, a new dawn in West Indies cricket?
You don't have to give the caveat all due respect, because I fully understand what you're saying, because we've all experienced it. What I will say, I won't even go down the road of talking about is this a turning the corner or false dawn, because I just have to go back to 12 months ago when West Indies won at the Gabba. There was a tremendous sense of optimism, went to England, lost the 3 tests heavily, was soundly beaten, lost in the Caribbean to South Africa, and have struggled again, and only now I enjoy this victory. There's way too much to be repaired in West Indies cricket for us to get carried away with one notable test match victory. We'll enjoy it, we'll rejoice in it, but I think West Indies fans have been living this life far too long to entertain the thought of a false dawn.
Fazeer, you mentioned about the Pakistani perspective, about the pitches. I mean, the knives are already out for the coach and for the captain as well, for several of the players, particularly the senior players are getting quite a lot of stick and criticism, and rightly so, in my opinion. What did you make of the Pakistan team in this 2-match series and then their tactics?
First and foremost, I am disappointed that Pakistan would show such disregard for their history of fast bowling to rely almost entirely on spinners. I think it's a backward step. I understand that Aqib Javid, a former fast medium bowler himself, would have said that he doesn't believe there's the quality of fast bowling to justify having them with a fighting chance in test match cricket. But does this help? Does this really help? If I'm a young fast bowler coming out of Buriwala, like where Waqar would have come from, and watching a test match on television and seeing the spinners get all the wickets. Why would I even want to be a fast bowler? Why would I even want to follow in that legacy? And people might be telling me about Waqar and Wasim Akram and Imran Khan and Fazal Mahmood and so on. I would say that clearly that's ancient history. Because if this is how you're going to treat fast bowlers, why would I even want to try? And on the other side of it, clearly there's an issue with the quality of Pakistan's batting. And again, we can see the elements which suggest that if given a fair go, they can really rise to the occasion. But I get the sense that Pakistan, not just now, but for several months with all of the issues about captaincy and Babar Azam and Shaheen Shah Afridi and so on, that there's a tremendous sense of disarray. And this will only add to that, because everyone will be saying, you let yourself be beaten by the West Indies spinners who have no history and legacy, with one or two except on Lance Gibbs, Ramadan and Valentine, and a few others. You let yourself be beaten by the West Indies in Pakistan by spinners beating you at your own game. So yes, the weeping and the wailing and gnashing of teeth is inevitable. But I think sensible heads need to prevail. The question is, will those sensible heads be allowed to take a balanced view of things or look for another knee-jerk reaction?
Well, Fazeer, always a pleasure listening to your passionate views. And I think, excuse me, fingers crossed that both of our teams can move on from this series and improve and head in the right direction.
We can only hope, Saj.
Thanks very much, Fazeer. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Take care.